Have you ever wondered why a man begins to feel your presence more vividly when you're no longer there? Not just physically absent, but emotionally, energetically, mysteriously withdrawn into the sacred chambers of your own silence. It's not the loud departure that haunts him. It's the quiet disappearance, the vanishing act of a woman who once mirrored his soul, and then suddenly became unknowable. In the vast architecture of the psyche, Carl Jung spoke often of the anima, the feminine archetype that lives in every man's unconscious. She is chaos and comfort, seduction and sanctuary, muse and mirror. He doesn't consciously know it, but the woman he once touched, once kissed, once wounded, she begins to inhabit that archetype in his shadow. And when she retreats, truly retreats, not out of manipulation, but out of sacred self, her absence doesn't just create space, it opens a portal, a vacuum, a haunting. The moment she is no longer emotionally available to carry the weight of his projections, his ego begins to unravel. You see, for many men who have never faced their own reflection, who have never made peace with their childhood wounds or confronted their emotional immaturity, the woman becomes a surface onto which he casts his ideals and insecurities. As long as she is near, she bears the burden of his unlived soul. But when she leaves, when she steps out of the role he subconsciously assigned her, he is forced to face the hollowness inside. That hollowness is not about her body, or her laughter, or the way she said his name. It's about something far deeper. He doesn't miss her, he misses who he thought he was in her presence. The illusion, the identity, the carefully curated version of masculinity that she unknowingly sustained. And now, it's gone. He starts to remember her in fragments, not as she was, but as she existed in the mythos of his mind. A flash of her turning away, a memory of her silence after he pushed too far. The way she looked at him once, not with need, but with unbearable knowing. That gaze, that unflinching feminine stillness that seemed to see past his confidence, past his strategies, past even his strength. And now, she is not there to anchor him. His soul, uninitiated and fragmented, begins to stir. This is where obsession begins. Not in love, not in longing, but in the unbearable tension of a man facing the abyss she once distracted him from. She is no longer answering his messages. Her eyes are no longer available to reflect him back to himself. She is becoming myth, mystery, a symbol. And the more elusive she becomes, the more powerful her presence feels. This is the paradox. Absence, when wielded from a place of healed detachment, becomes far louder than presence. A woman who vanishes into her own sovereignty becomes unforgettable. And you, yes, you who once overgave, who once tried to explain yourself into being understood, who once waited by the phone, you are no longer available for those games. You are no longer bending to be palatable. You are no longer shrinking to be loved. You are, instead, returning to yourself, not to punish, not to prove, but to protect your spirit from the erosion of self-abandonment. And this is where he begins to spiral. The masculine ego, untempered by introspection, cannot easily tolerate emotional ambiguity. It wants resolution. It wants closure. It wants ownership. But you've given him none of those things. You've given him silence, not the passive kind, but the sacred kind. The kind that speaks of boundaries. The kind that reveals a woman who no longer orbits around external validation. The kind that makes a man confront what he's never dared to see, that he never truly knew you. He only knew the version of you that was willing to be known in the Stoic writings of Seneca and Epictetus. There is a recurring theme. What is beyond your control must be released without suffering. But most men have never learnt this. They seek control where there is none. They chase power in the emotional realm, only to find that power does not respond to force. It dissolves under pressure, and so he tightens his grip. He replays old conversations. He looks for signs. He asks mutual friends. He scrolls. He waits. He dreams. But the woman who has reclaimed her worth is not waiting to be missed. She is walking through the fire of her own shadow. She is remembering who she was before she tried to be desirable. She is shedding the layers of false femininity, the pleaser, the fixer, the empath turned martyr. She is not seeking revenge. She is seeking wholeness. And in doing so, she becomes magnetic in a way no seduction technique can replicate. Because true feminine power is not performance, it is presence. And sometimes that presence is felt most deeply in her absence. He may not admit it aloud, but something inside him shifts, slowly at first, like a whisper on the edges of his awareness. Then louder, an ache, a tension, a quiet madness that wraps itself around his spine when he realizes you're not coming back the same. Not as the woman who needed his validation, not as the woman who laughed too easily at his half-hearted promises, not as the girl who once poured herself empty to prove she was enough. Now he walks through the ruins of a connection he once thought he controlled, and the silence you've left behind becomes a mirror, not of you, but of himself. A brutal, unfiltered confrontation with his own emotional vacancy. This is the beginning of what Jung called the encounter with the shadow, the moment when the unconscious erupts into consciousness, often triggered by loss, rejection, or longing. It is not you that breaks him. It is his own unacknowledged wound, torn open by the void where your warmth used to be. But do not mistake this for punishment. The feminine does not exist to teach men through pain, nor to carry their growth on. Her back, yet her withdrawal, when aligned with her truth, is a force of nature, a tidal wave of energetic recalibration that compels him to evolve or to crumble, and most crumble first in the absence of your soft affirmations. He feels naked. In the absence of your listening heart, he feels unheard by the world. He may lash out, he may project, he may reach out with half-hearted apologies or cryptic messages, not to reconnect, but to test your boundaries. It is not love. It is the fear of irrelevance, the dread that your life may flourish without him, that your garden might bloom, in places he will never be allowed to walk again. Men, in their most unconscious state, are addicted to being the center of a woman's emotional universe. The second they are no longer that sun, the second she orbits around her own becoming, they panic, because without her attention, they are forced to generate their own light, and few know how. Jung knew this. He wrote of the dangers of refusing the call to individuation, the process of becoming whole through the integration of all one's parts. The light, the dark, the fragile, the fierce. Your absence demands that he begin that process. Whether he will or not is no longer your burden to bear. And yet, something curious happens during this time. The woman you are also transforming. While he wrestles with the phantom of your former presence, you are learning to belong to yourself again. You are not checking for signs or watching his digital breadcrumbs like oracles. You are sitting with your own discomfort, your own fear of being forgotten, your own inherited wounds of abandonment, and you are not running. This is what Jung meant when he said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. You are becoming conscious, not just of him, but of the stories you once told yourself about what love was supposed to look like, about how much suffering you were supposed to endure in the name of connection, about how small you needed to become to be chosen, and now you are rewriting them. He, on the other hand, is beginning to feel haunted, not by what he did, but by what he didn't do. The moments he silenced you instead of listening, the chances he had to see you really, see you, and chose instead to protect his pride. The way you still showed up, day after day, with soft eyes and open hands, until you didn't. And that moment, the moment you no longer fought to be seen, is when he first felt you. This is the strange alchemy of human attachment. The more a woman chases, the more invisible she becomes. The more she pleads, the more he forgets her voice. But the moment she becomes unavailable, not as a tactic, but as a truth, her essence multiplies in his psyche. She becomes myth, memory, muse. Do you understand now? It was never about being loved harder. It was about being loved rightly. And in the absence of that rightness, you stopped showing up. Not out of bitterness, not out of rage, but because something ancient in your blood remembered. You were never meant to convince someone of your worth. Your absence, then, is not a game. It is not strategy. It is the silent declaration of a woman who finally chose herself, and the man who let her go begins to realize he never truly had her. In the spaces where you once poured affection, attention, softness, there is now stillness. Stillness so vast, it echoes. He searches for signs in the silence, as though it were a language he never bothered to learn. He replays your final words, your last glance, your sudden retreat, hoping to decode a message, a hidden invitation to return. But there is none. You are not waiting. You are becoming. The feminine energy, once distorted to serve others, is now purifying itself. No longer wrapped in the trauma response of being enough. No longer performing worthiness. No longer tethered to the illusion that love must be earned through pain. You are no longer his mirror. You are the flame. The wild, untamed flame of individuation, and a man who has never walked into his own inner cave will find your light blinding. But still, he obsesses, not with love, with loss, with control, with the unsettling mystery of a woman who no longer reacts. There is a sacred violence in detachment, not of aggression, but of existential disruption. He once believed he could disappear emotionally, and you would wait, that he could withhold, push, provoke, and you would bend. That your love was a guarantee. Now, he learns what it means to lose, not just a woman, but the center of his imagined power. Carl Jung wrote, "When an inner situation is not made conscious, it appears outside as fate. To him, your absence begins to feel like fate, like punishment, like something external has taken you away. But he does not yet realize. He pushed you into your becoming. Every moment of emotional absence from him was an initiation. Every betrayal, every avoidance, every subtle degradation, they were the whispers from the self, from your deep feminine soul, inviting you back into your own arms. And now you are there, holding yourself in the places he once left you, cold. He sees it, perhaps on a story, in your eyes, in your voice when you speak again, if you speak again. Something unnameable has changed. You are no longer the woman he remembers, because you are no longer willing to collapse to be chosen. Let him feel this rupture, not out of vengeance. The awakened woman does not seek revenge. She seeks truth. And the truth is, a man who only values your presence when it's gone, never valued you at all. He valued the way you made him feel, the way you inflated his ego, the way your presence softened his guilt, masked his inadequacies, kept him from facing his own unhealed masculine wounds. He did not love you. He loved the silence of not being confronted by himself. But now that silence is gone. Because your absence is loud. It reverberates through every shallow connection he tries to replace you with. Every quick dopamine hit. Every meaningless distraction. Every half-hearted conversation with women who don't pierce his soul the way you did. And slowly, the realization dawns. He cannot unsee you, because you did not touch his body. You touched his psyche. There is a kind of feminine presence that burns its mark into a man's unconscious. She doesn't need to be the most beautiful, the loudest, the most desired. She is the most felt. She is the one who stood still in the fire of his avoidance, who offered her soul before he was ready to receive it, who finally turned away, not in rage, but in reverence for herself. You are that woman now. You no longer overcomplain, no longer plead. You do not need to be understood, because you have understood yourself, and there is no turning back from that kind of knowing. Meanwhile, he walks through his emotional labyrinth, uncertain whether to chase, to apologize, to disappear. None of it matters anymore, because once a woman has stepped into her sacred detachment, the game is over. Her soul is no longer available for negotiation. Her energy is sovereign. Her heart, not closed but protected, beats now in rhythm with something higher, something older than time. The feminine self. He may return. Many do, with promises and poetic apologies, with flowers and tears and regrets. But the woman who left to find herself cannot be seduced by nostalgia. She has seen too much. She has felt too much. And more importantly, she has remembered the truth. Healing is more seductive than any man's attention. So now, he's the one watching. She is not angry. She is not cold. She is simply gone in the quiet hours of night, when the noise of the world dissolves and he's left alone with himself. That's when he feels it most. The ache of her absence. Not because she left with drama. Not because she slammed doors or shouted final words, but because she simply disappeared from the emotional grid of his reality. She stopped feeding his sense of control. She stopped responding to the hunger in his voice. She stopped reflecting his distorted masculinity back to him like a loyal mirror. Now, the mirror is gone, and all that's left is the raw reflection of who he actually is. This is where the male psyche, as Jung warned, often fractures. When the anima, the inner feminine, is no longer projected onto a real woman. He must either internalize her or descend into chaos. If he has not done the inner work, if he has never touched the wounded boy within, if he has never looked at his mother wounds, his control issues, his fear of vulnerability, then your silence becomes intolerable. It is not rejection he feels. It is death, the ego's death. A man who is still ruled by the unhealed masculine does not mourn the loss of love. He mourns the loss of power. And so the obsession begins, not out of devotion, but out of disorientation. You were the compass he never admitted he needed. And now, without you, he is emotionally lost. But you, the woman, are no longer circling. His confusion, you are rising through it. You have become what Jung called the individuated self, no longer bound by roles, no longer enslaved by the archetype of the pleaser or the savior. You are not here to mother him. You are not here to fix him. You are not here to explain to a grown man what it means to respect your heart. That era is over, and here lies the sacred cruelty of emotional growth. You may still love him. A part of you may always carry an echo of what could have been. But love is no longer the currency you use to buy someone's potential. You have stopped trading your intuition for promises. You have stopped lowering your standards for chemistry. You have stopped abandoning yourself for connection. Now, you sit on the throne of your own becoming. He sees this now. He sees it in the way your light no longer bends toward him. In the way your silence is not cold, it is golden. It is filled with meaning. It is filled with the echoes of every time you stayed quiet to keep the peace. Every time you tolerated less. Every time you made yourself small. And now, you are vast, unreachable, intoxicatingly distant. And he begins to remember everything. He remembers your patience, your eyes, the way you forgave what was never acknowledged, the way you made space for his healing while he made excuses for his harm. He remembers the softness he took for granted, not knowing it came from a warrior's heart. He remembers the last look you gave him, not angry, but final. The look of a woman who has finally stopped waiting to be chosen, because she has chosen herself. This is when his obsession deepens, not with your body, not even with your return, but with understanding. He rereads your messages. He replays your voice. He stalks your energy, trying to figure out, when did she stop needing me? When did I lose her? How did she slip through my fingers so silently? But this mystery is not his to solve anymore, because it is not a riddle. It is your rebirth. You have walked through the valley of emotional scarcity and come out sovereign. You have tasted the bitter flavor of conditional love, and you have spit it out. You are no longer addicted to validation. You are no longer seduced by inconsistency. You have found a new drug, and it's called peace. And peace, to a chaotic man, is the most dangerous thing a woman can embody, because he cannot disturb her. He cannot penetrate her world with manipulation or charm. He cannot hook her again unless she permits it. And most of all, he cannot own her, so he becomes obsessed. Not because she is gone, but because she is now free. And no man forgets the woman he couldn't cage. Somewhere deep within him, the realization begins to bloom, slow and terrifying like the rise of a tide. He can't control. It isn't that she left, it's how she left, without begging, without grand gestures, without threats or ultimatums. She simply became unavailable, not physically, but energetically, spiritually, emotionally. The doors she once kept cracked, open with hope, have been sealed by self-respect. And now, for the first time, he faces what he never thought he would. Her absence without access. There is no greater wound to the ego than being denied the chance to perform redemption, because, to the unhealed man, love is not something he receives. It's something he manipulates into returning. He imagines himself as the architect of women's emotions, the sculptor of their desire. But she, the woman who has done her shadow work, who has faced her pain and no longer needs to outsource her identity. She is unmoved, and so he obsesses, not with her body, not with her scent, not with the memories of shared beds and soft words, but with the power she now holds, the power of having nothing left to prove. She doesn't post to provoke. She doesn't speak to suggest. She exists fully, authentically, without bending her radiance to make him notice. And in this radiant neutrality, in this divine indifference, he begins to suffer. Because now, for the first time, he is confronted by her essence, not her. Jung believed that the anima, the internal feminine, is not just a symbol of love or beauty. She is also the guide to the soul, the pathway through which a man becomes whole. But when he refuses the call, when he avoids his depths, when he clings to control, The anima becomes a ghost, and the women he once dismissed become the catalysts. For his unraveling, she has become that catalyst. Not through vengeance, through evolution, he may attempt to return. He may try to resurrect the version of himself she once needed. He'll say he's changed. He'll say he finally sees. But what he doesn't understand is this: she no longer needs to be seen by him. That longing died in the silence. That ache was buried beneath every unanswered question, every stone wall, every emotionally vacant night, and what grew in its place was her. She is now fluent in boundaries. She is no longer impressed by apologies dressed as epiphanies. She knows the difference between change and charm, between obsession and love, between a man who comes back because he's lonely and a man who comes back whole. And so she waits for no one. She does not measure her worth by whether he returns. She does not pray for the sound of his voice. She walks into rooms with her head high, not because she wants him to notice, but because she finally notices herself. This is the torment he cannot name, that the woman who once gave him the power to destroy her now holds the power to ignore him. And while he may try to rewrite the story, to reach out with nostalgia, to bait her with old sparks and ghostlit promises, he will find she is immune, because she is no longer in the arena of emotional codependency. She no longer participates in dynamics that cost her peace. The great Stoic Marcus Aurelius once said, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." And now, her thoughts are drenched in self-love, in sacred solitude, in the clarity that comes only after walking through fire. She has dyed her soul in freedom, and it shines. And him. He lives in the grey dot, in the maybe, in the what if, in the shadow of a woman who no longer needs saving, especially not by him. That's the moment of obsession. Not the one where he remembers her, but the one where he finally realizes she forgot him, not with anger, not with malice. She simply rose so far beyond who she used to be, that the version of him who wounded her can no longer reach her. He will feel this in his bones, in his sleep, in the silence after he closes the door of another meaningless encounter. He will feel the truth in ways logic cannot protect him from. He did not lose her when she walked away. He lost her every time she stayed, and he did not show up, and now she is no longer his to find. Time passes, not fast, not slow, just enough for him to begin forgetting the details. The sound of her laugh, the cadence of her footsteps, the softness in her silence before she spoke. But what he cannot forget is the imprint, the haunting familiarity of a presence that once wrapped around his chaos like silk around fire. She did not just exist in his life, she shaped it. And now that she's gone, the absence is not a gap, it's a chasm. He tries to fill it, new faces, temporary highs, smiles without weight, but everything tastes like ash compared to the richness of what he ignored. He mistook her depth for drama. He called her intuition paranoia. He branded her boundaries as coldness. And now, those very qualities, the ones he rejected, are what make her unforgettable. This is not about punishment. The awakened feminine does not punish, she allows. She allows consequences to arrive unforced. She allows the natural order of things to flow without interference. She allows space to reveal truth. And the truth is this: obsession blooms when the soul senses it has missed something sacred. He is obsessed not with her form, but with what her form meant. She was his unconscious, living, breathing, radiant. She was the invitation to look inward, to soften, to awaken. and he declined, repeatedly, until the invitation expired. And now she has become untouchable. There is a kind of woman who does not return, not because she holds grudges, but because she holds standards. A woman who has touched the bottom of her own abandonment, who has sat in the ashes of her dignity and rebuilt it without applause. That woman is not moved by breadcrumbs. She is not lured by promises born from regret. She has gone through a death, the death of illusion, and emerged sovereign. Jung called this process the transcendent function, the reconciliation of opposites, the birth of the new self from the integration of shadow and light. This is what she has become, not the old self trying to be loved, not the false self trying to please, but the integrated self, fully whole, fully free, fully herself. And he is just beginning to understand. What he lost, he remembers now how she used to sense things before he could speak them, how she knew when he lied, even without evidence, how her energy would change in response to his disconnection, how she forgave him for things he never acknowledged. He sees now that she wasn't too much. She was tuned in. She wasn't. Emotionally, she was prophetic. And he silenced her wisdom because it scared him, because it asked him to rise, because it made him feel seen in places he had not yet accepted in himself. He sees it too late, and what is left is obsession. Not because she is gone, but because her absence has awakened a hunger in him that no one else can satisfy. Not because of her body, not even her love, but because she required his growth and he refused. So now the loop begins. He checks her pages, watches her stories, lingers on her name in the dark. His body remembers, his spirit aches, his pride tells him not to reach out, but his soul is screaming through the silence. He may write drafts. He never sends. May hover over her name like a man hovering on the edge of a cliff. But he knows whatever he says now will not matter, because she is no longer in the realm of words. She is in the realm of energy, and her energy says, I do not belong to you anymore. This is the power of detachment, when a woman truly lets go, not performatively, not to make him chase, but in truth, in wholeness, she becomes untouchable. Her memory remains, but her permission vanishes. And no man forgets the woman who reclaimed her power without warning, without ceremony, without noise. So he obsesses quietly, constantly, eternally, not with what she was, but with who she became the moment he lost her. There comes a point when the obsession turns inward, not in healing, not yet, but in collapse. He can no longer deny it. The image of her haunts even the mundane. Her essence lingers in places she's never been. A song, a color, a glance from someone else. It's as if the universe conspires to remind him, not of her body, not of her smile, but of her energy. That undeniable sovereign pulse that once answered his chaos with compassion, but she is not his anymore. And slowly, painfully, a new awareness begins to emerge within him. He never really knew her. He only knew the version of her he had access to, the one willing to dim, to soften, to shape herself around his limitations. That woman is gone. In her place stands someone he can no longer touch, not because she is hiding, but because she has risen above the frequency of his reach. This is the death of the ego, the long, slow death of the part of him that believed he could always return, always repair, always be welcomed back, like a god into a temple he once abandoned. He understands. Now, she was the temple, and his worship was conditional. Half-hearted late, he begins to suffer. But this time, it's different. Not the frantic suffering of loss, but the cold, sobering suffering of self-recognition. The realization that she didn't change, she revealed. She revealed his incapacity to love, to stay, to grow. And now that he is finally ready, she is already gone. And you, the woman, you feel none of this. Not in the same way. Because you are not watching, you are not wondering. You are not measuring your value by the gravity of his regret. You are elsewhere, not in place, but in spirit. You are in new conversations, new joys, new silences that no longer ache. You are not numb, you are alive. And most importantly, you are free. The man who once centered your world has become a distant echo, not an enemy, not even a villain, just a chapter, a lesson, a mirror that shattered and with its breaking revealed your own reflection beneath. All the layers you once wore to be loved. You are no longer the girl who fears abandonment. You have abandoned the fear. You have looked directly into the wound and chosen not to wait for anyone to rescue you from it. You have loved yourself through the dry seasons, held yourself through the storms, and learned that the most powerful woman is not the one who is adored, but the one who is aligned. So, now you walk differently. You speak less, but your words cut deeper. You smile slower, but it means more. You no longer rush to be understood, because you finally understand yourself. And that kind of woman, the one who returns to her body, to her voice, to her sacred, no, is unforgettable. He may spend the rest of his life trying to recreate what he lost with you. He may try to shape new women into your silhouette, but it will not work, because you are not just a woman. You are a doorway, and he refused to walk through it. And now the door has closed. This is the true power of absence, not in what it takes away, but in what it reveals. It reveals the strength of a woman who no longer needs to perform. It reveals the truth of a man's capacity to meet her or not. It reveals the love that was real and the love that was projection. And once it is seen, it cannot be unseen. So let him obsess. Let him spiral. Let him sit in the stillness he once forced you to swallow. You owe him nothing. Not a reply. Not an explanation. Not your softness. Because the woman who knows her worth doesn't chase. She chooses.